Hi everyone, welcome to our ACL injury prevention video. This video contains exercises and instructions on how to prevent ACL injuries.
The contents of this video include two different sections. The first section will be on landing instruction, where we will teach you a progression of exercises for proper landing form, tips on landing throughout, and some do's and don'ts. The second section will be strengthening exercises, where we will show you the dosages to do, instructions on 3 simple exercises, and tips on some common mistakes.
Alright, so some of the resources that you guys are going to need for these exercises are, first we want to start off with a safe surface for landing and jumping. So we want to make sure that the floor isn't slippery or anything like that. You're going to need a box or a chair with a wide, sturdy base. Therefore, it's safe to step onto and jump off of. You want to start with a 12-inch box or chair, and then you can progress to 18 inches as you progress with the activity. And you want enough space to perform these activities safely. Some non-essential items you may want in the future are weights to increase the challenge by adding resistance, or a chair for balance assistance.
As far as dosage goes, we suggest the landing progression exercises to be performed as needed to learn proper mechanics. These will vary from player to player. With the strengthening exercises, we suggest these be performed each practice as part of the dynamic warm-up, with the dosage listed below.
The first progression in our landing instruction is the reaching plate squat. The player should have their feet about shoulder width apart while holding a small weight in front of them to serve as a counterweight to the squat. The player's feet can be turned accordingly to individual comfort. If a small weight isn't available, the player can simply hold their arms in front of them instead. While squatting down, make sure to keep the chest up and the bottom down. The focus throughout is to monitor valgus, and remember, valgus is that knock-knee position we want to avoid. From this side view, you can see the player sitting back while keeping her chest up. Make sure you remember to tighten your stomach muscles here to assist with your squat. Squat down as low as you can comfortably. Everyone is different, and squatting to different depths is fine. Depth is not the goal.
The next progression for landing mechanics is the drop squat. Here the player starts in standing from an athletic position and drops into a squat. The legs and feet will widen with the drop, and as in our plate squat, the player will tighten their stomach muscles, keep the bottom going backwards, chest up, and most importantly, make sure no valgus is present in the legs. This exercise is preparing the player to make soft, safe, athletic landings. Again, you can see from the side view of the drop squat, the player's core is engaged, their back is straight, and the chest is up.
The next landing exercise is called the box step off and land. Now we are getting closer to simulating actual game-like landings. Make sure both surfaces, the box or chair and the landing surface, are safe and free of clutter. The surface used here is 12 inches, and this can be progressed to 18 inches. The player will step off the surface with one foot and softly land on 2 feet with their weight distributed as evenly as possible. The focus here is again minimizing valgus while landing with the knees bent in a soft athletic posture. As you can see from the side view, the player is again landing by keeping her bottom back with the chest up. Their core is engaged and her legs are bent to brace for the landing. This bent leg position will engage leg muscles to help minimize forces from the ground and protect the player from injury.
This is the final landing progression. The player will perform a mini squat and then jump off the ground. All aspects of the prior 3 exercises will be applied here. Continue to focus on engaging core muscles, landing softly with bent knees, and preventing valgus. This exercise will teach the player to safely perform takeoff as well as landing safely. From the side view, you can see how all prior aspects are still being applied from start to finish.
Throughout the landing progression, make sure the player is finishing in an athletic posture or ready posture. This is similar to a defensive posture in basketball with the legs bent, bottom sitting back, chest, head, and eyes up so the player is ready to move in any direction necessary.
Now let's look at some common mistakes. Oftentimes when landing, players will have their weight too far on their toes, causing them to lose their balance forward. Conversely, if the player's weight is too far on their heels, they may fall backwards. Make sure during landing that the player's weight is through the balls of the feet to maintain proper balance.
Another common mistake is favoring one side or the other. If the player's trunk leans too far to the left or to the right, then that will stress one leg more than the other. Additionally, the player is more susceptible to losses of balance in that direction. Upon landing, coaches or teammates can test for even weight distribution with a gentle nudge to the player's shoulder to see if their balance is sufficient.
This is the main common mistake that we are trying to avoid. Observe as the player lands in that knock-knee position, otherwise called valgus. This position can put a player at a greater risk for ACL injury. Engage the core muscles as well as the hip and buttocks muscles to avoid valgus. Stay tuned for strength exercises to help later in our video.
Here we see another common mistake. The player is landing with her legs stiff and straight. Remember to land with your knees a little bit bent. This will help engage more muscles in order to protect the knees. Now that we've given you some tips on landing, let's look at some exercises to keep your legs and core strong to help protect your knees as you train and play basketball. The first exercise is the side plank. This exercise has been found to work the gluteus medius muscle, which will help prevent the valgus position that we know leads to injuries. Here, the player starts with her elbow down and under her shoulder and her knees down with the opposite hand on her hip. This exercise can be progressed and made more difficult by raising up onto the feet. Make sure that you keep your hip up high towards the ceiling. A common mistake here is letting the top hip drop down towards the ground. Make this exercise harder by raising an arm, then the leg, and finally by going up from the elbow onto the hand. The final starfish position you see is the most difficult.
The next exercise is a single leg squat. This exercise will again strengthen your core muscles as well as the hip. This is a very difficult exercise, so it may be helpful to have a chair next to you for balance. The goal here is not depth, but avoiding the knee buckling into that valgus knock-knee position. As you can see from the side view, it may be more difficult to perform as deep of a squat here, but that's perfectly fine. Progress this exercise by taking away your chair once you feel comfortable. Do not sacrifice your form here though. Keep the chair in place as long as necessary to maintain your technique.
The next exercise is the Romanian deadlift. The player should hinge from their hips, keeping the back straight while lifting one leg off the ground. The leg on the ground should also be kept as straight as possible too. Try and keep the back and the lifting leg aligned as straight as you can. This exercise will work your hamstring muscles as well as the core. As you hip hinge, you will reach down with one or both hands while keeping the head looking straight forward. Try and keep the chest and shoulders square with the ground as you hip hinge forward. Oftentimes, the lifting leg will turn outwards during this exercise. Try and imagine the foot pointing down to minimize this. Some players will be able to touch the floor and others will not. But as with the squat depth, touching the floor is not the goal. Engaging the core, keeping the back and lifted leg aligned with the planted leg straight is more important. Weight can be added to this exercise to provide more challenge.
These are the resources that we used. Thank you all so much for your time. Please reach out if you have any questions. Go Steelers!